My name is Amy Beatty. I'm the Parks and Recreation Superintendent for the City of Wilmington, and we're here tonight to provide you with an update on the public input that we have received during the planning process for the North Waterfront Park and to let you know what our next steps are. We're being recorded tonight for those folks who are not able to join us and are out enjoying the weather, so if I may, I'm going to ask you to hold your questions until the end of the presentation. It'll just make for a better viewing experience for those who are going to watch online or on GTV. What we're going to do tonight is briefly go over a history of the project, talk about some common objectives of the park, show you a base map that we started out with at the beginning of our public input campaign, and let you know and discuss what our planning formula was for the project, and give you the results of the public engagement campaign, which I think is why everybody is here, and again, let you know what our next steps will be. Why are we here tonight? As a reminder, in December of 2013, our City Council purchased 6.63 acres for a park in the Northern Downtown District for $4.1 million. And on May 22nd in this room, we launched a public engagement campaign for the planning process for the park. We received comments through December 31st, and we will report out on those comments tonight. After we purchased the park, the first thing we did was talk about the principles for the park, and the principles would really inform what the planning and design would be for the project. And you can read them on the slide. I won't read all of them for you, but to emphasize, we know that there's a need to have a public venue for large community gatherings and events. We would like to develop as much of the footprint of the park into a park and not have to utilize a lot of park acreage for parking. With that being said, we know that parking is an issue downtown, and we heard that a lot from the various stakeholder groups that we met with when we were discussing our plans for the park. And our desire is that as the Northern Downtown District develops, that we look for as many opportunities to collaborate with private developers in order to meet the needs for those parking plans. And we'll talk a little bit more about parking as we go through the presentation. Ensure the park is safe, clean, and comfortable for all those who visit. That seems like a no-brainer, but that really can inform your design. For example, right now, the park doesn't have too many accesses to it and isn't very visible. It has no road frontage. There is a right-of-way, public right-of-way for the old Front Street that exists on the east side of the park. And we're recommending that street continuing through. That puts more eyes on the park and helps to ensure that safe, clean, comfortable feeling. Lighting will be very important in meeting that principle, as well as how we decide to design the park elements and the infrastructure of the park. We want to make sure that the park is accessible, not just to folks who want to drive, but who may want to walk or get there by bicycle or by public transit. We think there's a real opportunity to showcase Wilmington's history and identity as a port city. As you look around downtown, there aren't a whole lot of examples in existing architecture, parks, etc., that showcase our harbor and what our history has been with the river, and we think that this presents a real opportunity to do that in some pretty neat ways. We want to create a number of small areas that will accommodate a variety of uses. And that's really important when you go back to that first principle or first objective of having a large public venue. We think it's important and very doable to meet both of those objectives, which on the face of it may seem to be in opposition to one another. So in other words, we want this park to be just as busy on a Monday morning or a Thursday afternoon as it may be on a Saturday night. And how we design the park will dictate the success of that. For example, we know we have a need for a performance space, but will we see something that looks like the Red Hat Amphitheater in Raleigh Probably not, because then we would limit the amount of use and programming and vibrancy that the park could have during those times when there's not an event. We have coined the term, actually we stole the term, intense casual use, from another park planning effort. So what that means is, while we don't see this site as optimal for a lot of sporting infrastructure such as tennis courts, basketball courts, soccer fields, we do want there to be an opportunity for people to use it both casually and in programmed events. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we get further into the presentation. But again, the terms that I want you to remember are vibrancy and maximization of use. So this is what we started with when we went out to the public. It was very important for us to show the public that we didn't have a lot of preconceived plans for this area. This is pretty much a blank slate, just a big green blob, and we wanted you to tell us what should go in that big green blob. And then we developed our planning formula, which is basically a four-pronged planning formula. The first being looking at our adopted plans. In particular for this project, the Wilmington's Vision 2020 plan and the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. Both of those plans sought a lot of public input, and a lot of staff resources went into developing those plans. So we look back to those plans to inform us what this park should look like. And both plans call for a park in the area where the city purchased the park property. And both plans also talk a lot about reconnecting residents with the waterfront. And that's, a sort of conceptual term that maybe is hard to define or hard to wrap your head around. It can mean different things to different people. But our river is the heart of our city, and we want to look to having that river access available to people in many different ways. A good example of a city that did that is Greenville, South Carolina, and their downtown park, which is called Falls Park. And for many years, there was no access to the Broad River. The Broad River runs right through the middle of Greenville, but you wouldn't know it if you lived there because you couldn't see it, you couldn't touch it. There was a vehicular bridge that went over it. There was no way to get to the river. We don't have that situation here, but we do have a lot of opportunity to sort of make some more east-west connections to open up the visibility of the river and create more access opportunities off of the river. And having this property and being so fortunate to be able to have 6 acres that fronts the river is a real opportunity to do that. The next prong in the planning formula, just walk down the street, look outside our windows, see what's happening out there. We know that we have a lot of public events, large-scale events that are happening downtown, such as concerts, special events, race setup areas that don't have a home. We're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole by having these types of events in streets or in parking lots. And while it may look great, as the picture in front of you shows, it's a packed house, everybody's having a good time, but the logistics to get to that picture are the issue. This is a picture of one of Wilmington Downtown Incorporated's Sundown concert series, which is a wonderful event, but it does involve a lot of manpower both on WDI's part and the city's part to get this venue into working order for a concert. Those folks had a great night that night. A lot of them were probably downtown the next morning for the farmer's market and saw a strand of porta potties left over there from the concert, which isn't, ideal when you're shopping for your produce. So we know that we need a dedicated space that can host all of our events. The next thing we did in our planning formula was to look at benchmark parks. So in other words, parks that we felt had the same common objectives that we did and who did it the best. And we looked both statewide, regionally, and nationally. And you can see some of the objectives listed at the bottom of the screen that we really focused on. Again, that ability to host multiple events at one time. We want to make sure we have good connections to the surrounding areas, the development that will occur in the private domain surrounding the park. Ample lighting, again, for that safe, comfortable feeling. And we hope that this will catalyze and believe this will catalyze surrounding private development. And again, that programmed use and also casual use. We've been using the term outdoor rooms, and if any of you, and I know a lot of you have been to previous meetings on the North Waterfront Park, that's a term that we've used so that we divide spaces by landscaping or a path, but you do so in such a way that when you have that 6,000 person event, you're able to open up the park and utilize the entire space. This is a picture of Center City Park in Greensboro, which is a much smaller park than ours. It's about 1.5 acres, but they have effectively designed this park utilizing that outdoor room concept. There's an amphitheater over there on the top left side of the picture and a lawn in front of it. When there's not an event taking place there, you can see a yoga class taking place there during the week. So that's the sort of the thing that we're talking about. Our favorite park of all of the benchmark parks that we looked at that we thought got it right the best is a park called Discovery Green in Houston, Texas. And this park is a little bit larger than ours. It's about 11 acres, but we thought that they best put that practice of vibrancy and maximizing uses and that outdoor room concept with this design. They've got a large lawn that will host large concerts and other special events, but also has that sort of segmented other gardens and lawns where you can have different activities taking place at the same time during the rest of the week. The last and probably most important prong of our planning formula was the public engagement. Again, we started that. We began with a launch May 22nd in this room, and we wanted the public to know that while we had a vision for this park, we expected the public to be able to refine that vision for us and help us, help officials, and help the professionals who will design the park and identifying and building the park according to what the public desires. And how did we do this? We had presentations to various organizations, meetings with various downtown groups. We went to community events such as festivals and other locations where we would get a good cross-segment of surveys and responses. We had exhibits in a lot of our recreation facilities, such as the Fit for Fun Center, our community centers, where we had surveys out that people could let us know what they wanted to hear. And we received 1,400 surveys, which really for a standalone park project has been unprecedented for us. So we were so pleased at the interest that the community has in this park. Who responded? This is also very important to us because although this is a park that will serve downtown residents, downtown businesses, downtown workers, this is a regional amenity, and it's going to be enjoyed not only by all the citizens of Wilmington, but tourists to Wilmington and our regional neighbors. And so we were pleased to see that although the downtown zip code did garner the most responses, we received 242 survey responses from folks residing in that zip code. We also think we did pretty well in the other zip codes, as you can see before you. Folks in Leland across the river, we got a good response from them, 51. And again, because we were present at festivals and other community activities, we also received 26 other responses from other zip codes. As far as the age of folks who responded, you can see on the graph before you how that was distributed. And this was important to us as well. I think we hit a good cross-section of demographics. Typically in downtown projects, we've seen more of the 40 to 49, 50 to 59, or 60 or older demographics. So this was a little bit of a surprise to us that 30 to 39 was our highest demographic reporting. And that's good. And lest anybody thinks I have any age bias here, I am not. I've far moved out of that demographic a long time ago. But it's important to know what our current residents are looking for and what our new families downtown are looking for as well. Connection to downtown was also important. We asked folks, are you a Wilmington resident? Are you a downtown Wilmington resident? Do you work downtown? Are you a downtown business owner, or are you neither? You can see the vast majority of the folks who responded were residents who live in Wilmington but outside of downtown. But we also did get a good deal of response from people who reside downtown and work downtown. So drum roll. What elements would you like to see in the park? These were elements that were provided in the survey, and we asked folks to rank them. And you can see before you what came out on top. And this was really exciting about this is it corresponds very well with the principles or the common objectives that we laid out at the start of the project. So validated that we were going in the right direction with those objectives. I think we all know and desire more green space, and particularly shade in Wilmington. As everyone knows, we're getting ready to embark on some improvements to Riverfront Park on Water Street, and wonderful park and sort of the heartbeat and ground zero for our downtown, serves as the home to so many events. It's almost entirely hardscaped, and there's reasons for that. There's constraints there because of the bulkhead and a concrete structure that's under that park. There's only so much vegetation that we can muster there. It's not ever going to be the lush green space that we think that North Waterfront Park can be. Gardens also very important, and something that I think that we are lacking a little bit of downtown. Folks agreed that there needs to be a dedicated space for performance spaces, for community gatherings, a festival space, and on down the line. What would you not like to see in the park? This was a little bit harder to quantify because this was an open-ended question, and folks could write down whatever they wanted, and not only were they writing some things they didn't want to see, they were also writing some things they did want to see. So it took a little time to untangle the data, but basically people said that they don't want to see a lot of hard space. They don't want to see a lot of buildings. They don't feel like it's the most appropriate space for athletic facilities. They don't want to see an unsafe place, a lot of vagrancy, graffiti, public nuisance type of activity. I struggled when I was putting this slide together because I just thought it looked so ugly. And then I thought, well, okay, I guess if we're showing what people don't want, that's why it's not so pretty. So knowing what we know now and with the input that we received, again, going back to how the site plan for Discovery Green was developed, we have come up with a sort of a similar site plan for our park. But what will that look like once we have a design and a master plan? Well, we've taken a baby step in that direction and have developed a conceptual site plan, which is a working draft. And this, what we hope this illustrates is the elements that the folks said that they wanted and our common objectives. So again, we're showing a performance space at the top of the park with that eye symbol is where we right now believe that a stage would be most appropriate. And then we have in the areas of that are demarked by the J symbol, those areas can open into a large lawn that can accommodate, say, a 6,000 to 7,000 capacity special event. But at the same time, when we're not having that large scale event, this park can be utilized by somebody having, kids having a field trip. At the same time, somebody who works downtown may be having lunch in another area of the park. Somebody may be setting up for a corporate event taking place in the park that night in another area of the park. And then people, somebody may just be, throwing the Frisbee to their dog in another area of the park. But all of these uses are happening concurrently and they're compatible with one another. So the next steps, we will take that conceptual plan and we will refine it to add in all of the elements that will go into the park. And what we will do with that master plan, that will serve as a tool for us to look towards funding the development of the park. We will develop funding strategies. This will be a $10 to $15 million project. It will be very difficult to do that entirely with public money. So we'll be looking for grants, public grants, private grants. There will be sponsorship opportunities, opportunities for private donations, and we'll be able to value those at different levels when we're going through the master plan process. And again, pursue the development funding. And we'll continue to stay in touch with you. Somebody asked me tonight if they're going to be able to provide input. And again, the planning portion of the public input ended December 31st. But we're a long ways from developing the park, and the public input will continue. Once funding's obtained for a design, we'll go back and go through this process again. And so in the meantime, to stay engaged, my email is on this presentation. This presentation will be put on the city's website for folks to see. So we continue to want to hear your questions and comments. And at the risk of me speaking for 30 more seconds before throwing it over to you, I'm going to speculate that one of, if not the first questions, is going to be, when are we going to build this? And we can't answer that question tonight because, again, we have no funding identified yet for the development of the park, and the funding will dictate the timeline for development. So we wish we had an answer for you on that tonight, but the funding will dictate the timeline.